If you've ever heard the phrase yada 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 before, you'll know that it means boring, 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 yeah, blah, blah, blah. But I have discovered that this word is not as boring as it sounds. In Genesis 4 verse 1, we find the story of Adam and Eve. And it says there that Adam knew Eve and she bore a son called Cain. Have you ever considered that this is the greatest love story the world had ever come across at that time, because it was the only love story they'd ever come across? The pair were made fresh from the Creator's hand. They were quite literally a match made in heaven. You can imagine Eve running towards Adam, hair bouncing in the wind, and all the Bible says is Adam knew Eve. Well, Dana Gresh, founder of Pure Freedom Ministries, thought about this and she looked up that word, know, and she found that the Hebrew word was yada, which is the language the original text was written in. And when she looked up the definition of that word, she found that it meant to know, to recognise, to understand and to respect. So completely different to the image of sex that we're constantly being fed with. But what's also amazing about this is that she found that word was used nearly 900 times in the Old Testament. So we know that it's used in the context of a husband being in a sexual relationship with his wife. But it's also used nearly 900 times in the Old Testament for someone being in deep fellowship with God. It's as though God scratched his head and said, how can I let these people know how intensely passionate I am about them? And then he selected the ultimate human intimacy. And he said, this shall be an object lesson, a demonstration to illustrate how passionate I am about my people and how intimately close I want to be with my bride, the church. Is it any wonder then that the enemy is working double time to devalue, remove, eradicate and cheapen the image of sex in our lives?